This was the year 2003, 2004. And the movie Swadesh was released. So it was also shown in the recent screening by the Institute. So it's a very inspiring movie. And at that point, I felt that perhaps I should do something for the country. It's also interesting that I never had a computer till class 10th, I believe. I never had a course on machine learning in my undergraduate. And my first exposure, full exposure, was Andrew Ng's course. I watch this like you people watch TV. We have something known as the Institute Ethics Committee. Wherever we have any personal subject data being collected, we have to get it cleared from them. If I don't carry a niggle, I would always love to play a sport, football or swimming or tennis or TT. If needed, and I did this in the US, I could cook rajma chawal like things were.
Namaste, Sat Sri Akal, and hello everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of TEDxConversations brought to you by TEDx IIT Gandhinagar, MAPRC and Vintio. I am Anurag.
And I am Tanvi.
And today we have the pleasure of inviting a brilliant academic researcher and a great personality, Professor Nipun Batra. Professor Batra is from the Department of Computer Science. He has a great academic background. He completed his PhD from IIIT Delhi and his postdoc research at University of Virginia. He has won numerous medals and achievements like the Young Alumni Award from IIIT Delhi and Dean's Letter of Appreciation for his fabulous teaching at IIT Gandhinagar.
Professor Batra, it's an honor to have you here with us today. In this podcast, we'll have the chance to get to know you, not just as a scholar, but on a more personal level, learning about the interests and passion that shape your life outside of academia.
Hello everyone. Hello Tanvi, Anurag. Great to be here. Pleasure to be here.
So to start with, you had the unique experience of studying and working at IIIT Delhi and University of Virginia. Can you share with us some differences between the academic environments and how they influenced your research journey so far?
Right. So between studies in India, research in India versus research in the US. So I have spent about 2 years in the US at University of Virginia across 2 stints. And I have some interesting anecdotes to share. So when I initially went there, they were doing a lab clear out. And so this was a part of the lab where they had a lot of sensors, a lot of computing equipments. And as a part of the lab clear out, they were also saying that if anyone wants to take this laptop. I wanted that laptop, but I was a bit shy. And they asked if anyone wants. And I was expecting perhaps that they will ask again if it's not taken. I kept it to myself. They threw away the laptop. At that point, I realized that, so this was a bit of a culture shock for me in the sense that I realized in the US, if you need something, you ask for it. And perhaps I was pretty pampered being brought up in India. So I realized that if you need something, you ask for it. And that was also true in research. If you needed certain help, if you needed certain instruments, you go and take help. You won't be given that without asking. So this was an interesting aspect. But as an overall, I think my experience enriched me a little bit. So I went back to some of my relatives and they were shocked to see me. They said that I have never seen you talk this much before. So I was typically a shy, reserved, more studious person, but I was able to talk. I was talking a lot more because I realized that you need to talk, you need to make connections, you need to learn, you need to take others' help. So this was an interesting thing which happened. But I also very vividly remember when I came back and the director at IIIT Delhi asked me that what was your experience, what was your learning. I told them about the numerous good things which I learned there. We also had better access to hardware. There were probably bigger research groups, all of those things aside. But I said that the biggest thing which I learned was that there's actually nothing stopping us from doing well. It's only in our own mindset. So before going, I had this mindset, to be very honest, that perhaps research in the West is better. They have better facilities. They have better this, better that. But after coming back, I realized that the only thing which was stopping me from doing well was me. So interestingly, sometimes I send my students out for research. They've been to different labs like CMU, etc. And one of the things they've all consistently told is they get a very good research experience, but they value whatever they had in India a lot more when they come back.
So, sir, as you told that you went to US to study, and from your academic background, it is quite clear that you are deeply interested in your research and in your machine learning and computer science. Sir, could you tell us what sparked your interest, particularly in the branch of computer science?
I think there. So I will not give a very. I'll give an honest answer. Sometimes we expect to see that everyone has a very clear-cut path and they had everything figured out. I wouldn't say that. I think there are many things which have to happen in certain directions in certain ways, and then you reach that specific path. And again, looking backwards is easy. So one critical component for me, I was probably 13, 14, something like that. This was the year 2003, 2004, and the movie Swadesh was released. So it was also shown in the recent screening by the institute. So it's a very inspiring movie. And at that point, I felt that perhaps I should do something for the country. I was anyway interested in science over, let's say, other subjects, science and maths over other subjects. So there were always an inclination towards some element of engineering. And I was horrible at biology. So it meant that the path was clear. And I also remember having some inclination towards building and breaking things, but be it carpentry or other things, more often breaking things than building or getting some things to work. But that was one moment which I believe was critical in defining like some interest in engineering. And computers, I was decent in programming. And it's also interesting that I never had a computer till class 10th, I believe, 10th or 11th, something like that. But even before that, I was good at programming. I think my programming only became worse after I got a computer, especially at least in school days. So a few things happened. Another thing which happened was I prepared a lot for a maths Olympiad, and I got sick. I couldn't give that exam, but I ended up giving another Olympiad, informatics Olympiad, where without any preparation I was able to do well. So I think there was some aptitude, some things which went well, and then I think I got lucky and I got into computer science.
So, sir, continuing from your academic journey, every student has some incidents in their college life which leave a lasting impact. So, is there any particular anecdote or memorable experience that you would like to share with us?
From my college life, I'll start one for the school life. I remember probably a first grader or a second grader, and I still remember this incident. I found a 10 rupee note somewhere lying in the school, and I went and gave it to the teacher, and the teacher patted on my head and said that very good boy, honest boy. And I still remember that little appreciation. I took it to heart. And from that day, I thought, no, honesty is a very good trait. I should abide by it. And I think that has helped me a lot. And I was mentioning the Swadesh incident. So that has also kind of inspired me. Another interesting aspect of that Swadesh, and that will lead into like what currently I'm doing. So at that point of time, that specific project which was talked about in the movie was global precipitation measurement, something of that. They were trying to measure the water index at different places using satellite monitoring. Now, about 20 years later, we are doing some work related to remote sensing, some work in collaboration with ISRO. So it's interesting to see how sometimes life can turn full circle.
That's really fascinating to know, sir. So, your work in applied machine learning has garnered significant attention. So, could you tell our viewers how your interest in this field began and what are those factors which keep motivating you to push the limits of this field?
Okay. Yeah. So what got me started into machine learning. One, I wanted to do something for the country, as I was mentioning. There was some background in that. I have seen that there were power outages. I'd seen various kinds of social problems I'd seen. And I was always interested in building things, technology. So that was one natural motivation to work towards problems which I could solve using technology. Then I enrolled in a PhD program. I was always interested in engineering, building things. But again, I did not have the kind of clarity that you people have. I will be upfront. I've in fact mentioned this in many of my letter of recommendations, which I'm sending on to universities. I have clearly mentioned the student is significantly better than what I was at this stage. So I've written this line for many students. I believe you people are very well sorted out. I was not. All I knew was I was interested in building things. I was interested in solving problems. I was interested in engineering. So I enrolled in a PhD program, and they were working on building energy consumption. So that was again a very interesting point because I was always interested in reducing the energy consumption, ensuring everyone has power. And in that project, I was working with another PhD student, but in the second year, I decided let me independently work on something. This was around the same time that Andrew Yang started the Coursera courses. It was called mlclass.org, something like that, in 2012. So again, things happened somehow by the same, like I was also lucky that this courses happened around the same time. It got me excited. And so slightly before this, I think during my undergraduate fourth year, I was already placed. So it was more relaxed time. There used to be something known as Google Tech Talks. I don't know if you have heard of those or seen those. There was something on data mining which got me very interested. So all of these things gradually, I never had a course on machine learning in my undergraduate. And my first exposure, full exposure, was Andrew Ng's course. I watched it like you people watch TV series. So I just watched it in 1-2 days. I just finished it. And I got very excited. And interestingly, like many people, when talk about machine learning, they think of things like deep learning, complex networks, etc. So I finished my PhD in 2017, and those 4-5 years where I was actually solving problems using machine learning, I never used complicated models like neural networks.
So I've also done the Andrew sir's course, and I can personally relate to your thing. And so another intriguing aspect about your work is the sustainability lab at IIT Gandhinagar. So could you share with us the philosophy on which the lab works and what is the sole focus of the lab?
So for Sustainability Lab, we're looking primarily into what UN defines as sustainability development goals. There are a few problems which are very India specific, which I always wanted to solve. Many of them I've seen upfront close. I have seen relatives who probably had preventable health issues, but because they were not diagnosed timely, the disease took much progressively worsened. I have also been born and brought up in Delhi, so I know that the horrible air quality problem I have seen. I've seen building energy consumption. Actually, I don't know if few people have worked with kerosene lamps or not. I have actually studied under them. Not a lot, but for some time. After that, we used inverters at home. So basically, these kinds of problems where it's actual environmental resilience problems, it's healthcare problems. That is what I've been interested in. So our idea is that can we use some sensing and some machine learning to solve these problems? So I can give you a few examples of such problems that we are solving. Like for health, everyone was wearing masks during COVID. We thought that, and no one was able to visit pulmonologists, lung doctors, or other doctors because everyone had stay-in-home orders. So our idea was that can we use the mask to sense your lung health based on your breathing? Now, your mask is a very good proxy, very tight system which is tightly knitted to you. If you could put a small sensor like an audio sensor, sampling at a low rate so that you don't have any privacy concern, if you could use that to measure your lung health, includes capacity, your total capacity, other parameters. We also extended such studies. So all of us are wearing smart watches or smart bands, but they're not very accurate in your calorie consumption because of one reason. They do not consider your respiration rate. They'll only consider your heart rate. So one such idea was that can we actually look at your respiration rate, but using thermal imagery. So if I have thermal imagery attached to some, like a smartwatch having a thermal sensor attached to the smartwatch, it can look at my nostrils, it can measure my respiration rate. So we're also extending such studies. Can we detect sleep apnea? So I believe both of you are staying in the hostel. Sometimes you're staying with 3 people, 4 people, you have roommate. Sometimes many of them are snoring. And snoring is often considered in India as a good sign that this person is sleeping he or she is sleeping well, they are getting good rest. Sometimes snoring is also a sign of things like sleep apnea, which is a disease where people stop breathing for some moments during the night, during the sleep, and then they have to suddenly wake up and get the breath back. So the numbers are staggering in India, like probably 1 in 7, 1 in 10, something like that have some tendencies towards sleep apnea. So the idea is that can we again measure the sleep apnea at an early stage using very minimal sensing. So this talks a little bit about the health sensing kind of work. For air quality, we are again trying to see can we create certain decision support systems. Like if X were done, then the pollution would be reduced by Y. If we move some vehicles from BS4 to BS6 standards, then what is the reduction in pollution? What is the reduction in the exposure? The other kinds of problems are we have very limited amount of sensing being done because sensors are very expensive, air quality sensors. Can we still predict the air quality at places we don't have sensors? Can we recommend way to install the next set of sensors? So you'd see that that's the general flavor of the problem. They are motivated very much by the real world problem, and they would think of some mix of sensing and applied machine.
So, sir, with such a dynamic research environment, is there any particular new project or research area that you're very excited about in your lab?
Yeah, so the healthcare one, which I was just talking about a couple of minutes back, we're very excited about this. So particularly, we're excited about and the air quality one. So we're very excited about them because now we're partnering with research institutes which have who have the domain expertise. For example, for the sleep apnea one, we're partnering with AIMS Delhi. Now, it's also interesting because typically for such studies, for sleep health studies, imagine you have to sleep at a hospital like AIMS in a lab, and you're put about 100 odd sensors on you. So can you sleep in that condition? Probably not. What we're saying is that we can take all of that away and we'll just put a thermal camera on top of it. So look at the difference. And because the doctors are also excited about such technologies. Similarly for air quality, like the government keeps on giving certain acts, and they keep on giving recommendations as to if X is done, if X technology is converted to Y. But using, as I was again mentioning, the Swadesh movement, can we use remote sensing, which is satellite data, as well as machine learning? We can now identify a lot of unregulated industries, a lot of unregulated sources of pollution, uses satellite imagery and some machine learning computer vision. And then we've been talking to different stakeholders, like in our case, different pollution control boards. So to me, this is very exciting that we are moving out of the phase where it's just a research paper being published to reaching out to different stakeholders. And that's where we realize there are a lot of challenges. Like it's one thing to just say that X, Y, Z is the problem and trying to solve it, but it's very different to actually go to talk to the stakeholders. You realize that many of the problems you had in your head are not actually problems.
So, as you talked in the lectures also about the ethical implications of machine learning and artificial intelligence. So, as they are becoming more and more important, so could you share with us a real life dilemma which you faced regarding whether to focus on the progress part or on the ethical part of the project?
Yeah, so ethical implications of AI have been, in some sense, fortunate with the problems I've had. Firstly, we have something known as the Institute Ethics Committee. Wherever we have any personal subject data being collected, we have to get it cleared from them. So I think every institute, every research lab has something like this, which is a very good practice. This and these committees often constitute people like doctors, lawyers, and people across different professions who can then weigh in and ensure that whatever you're doing is ethically correct. That's one. The second way, I think we've been, and these days, even research papers that we submit, they ask you to give an ethics statement. So I think having this clarity upfront is helpful. At the same time, because we're dealing with some problems which are like very societal impact problems, the specific kinds of problems that we have dealt with, we have not really any ethical problems thus far.
So, your dedication to teaching and research has been recognized with several awards, like the Young Alumni Award from IIIT Delhi and the prestigious Dean's Appreciation Letter for Teaching from IIT Gandhinagar. So, how does it feel to receive these awards, and what do these honors mean to you?
So if I'm very honest, I think these honors sometimes mean that you have been fortunate. So I can tell this from the fact that there have been many lectures where I have poured in my heart. I have prepared a lot, but they go horrible. Sometimes it could be the students have some assignments, or sometimes you realize that during the live lecture, you have a conceptual misunderstanding. So such things happen. So therefore, any such teaching award, anything, I think you have to feel fortunate. And we've also fortunate in the sense that sometimes you also have to be fortunate because the students have been very lively. If the students are not lively, I think the class participation and the speaker also loses the interest. So I would say being very on it. The other reason I've been like teaching has been a lovely profession for me because I try and understand things. And as Richard Feynman also says that if you want to understand something well, you try and teach it to someone, and that's when you realize where the gaps are. So I would suggest this to everyone. If you want to learn something well, try and teach it to some friends, to some colleagues, and you'll realize where the different kinds of people and realize where the gaps are. So I've always been a bit interested in teaching. I have had some teaching assistantship experience during my PhD days. And I realized that at that point, I realized this would be fun. You could interact with students, you learn from them, you yourself learn a lot of new things, which is one very important factor. And with students, it's always a very motivating experience because it's one profession where students will come back to you after several years.
So, as you shared with us about the current research going on in IIT Gandhinagar, so could you share with the future goals on which IIT Gandhinagar and the branch of computer science will be focusing on, and where does sustainability lab play a part in the overall sustainability and technological development of India?
Yeah, so overall, I think IIT Gandhinagar at this point is very uniquely positioned. Like we have had very cutting edge curriculums, which has been refined. We have had this opportunity to discuss the curriculum with industry partners, with startups, with think tanks, with governments, as well as academia. So that is one advantage which we very uniquely have. I believe others, like many organizations, many institutes are also doing this, which is very good. One thing which I'm very much looking forward to in the current timestamp is there are a lot of national importance missions, like clean air mission is one, the national supercomputing mission and the quantum computing mission, AI excellence. So there are a lot of such things which are of national importance, global importance, which the governments are also pushing a lot. So I see IIT Gandhinagar playing a very important part there. And I also see IIT Gandhinagar playing an important part towards real impact problems which India faces currently.
So, sir, as you are a mentor for many young researchers and students, including me, so, sir, what piece of advice would you like to give us to follow your path and become good in this field of computer science and machine learning?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily. The first advice would be to don't follow my path. I mean, you should have your own path. To be actually, just to rephrase that, I would say that take every advice with a pinch of salt, including mine. I think everyone will project their subjective experiences, and like you might have heard of the CV of successes. Like everyone posts the CV of successes. Sometimes there have been some endeavors where people are also sharing CV of failures. I think if we see the CV of failures of different people, we might not want to go into certain professions. Uh, I think what I still meant was that every well-meaning, well-intentioned person's advice could also not be directly applicable to you, but there are some truths I think which are still applicable. One thing which I really hope that our students are able to do is to do few things but do them very well. So this has also been one of the philosophy of our lab. Uh, in order to excel, I think we do need to focus on a few things. And if I reflect back on some of the students who have really done well, I would see some characteristics. One of them being that they follow through on what we discussed, what they said. Follow through does not necessarily mean that they are successful in everything we discussed, but following through means that they will come back to you if they face any problem. They're accountable. Like if you give them something, they will either get it done or they will come back to you describing very nicely why something didn't work. I think these are very good traits. And apart from that, I've always been a fan of sports. I would say being disciplined, which sports teaches, but various other things teaches. I think that is a very big lesson. I think in order to do something well, so as Cal Newport also says, if you want to do the famous author of the book Deep Work, or to do something well, it has to be focused effort times the intensity over a long period of time. That is what will give us rewards.
Thank you, sir, for that.
So IIT Gandhinagar is known for to be a research-oriented college, and innovation and creativity are an essential part of research. So, what strategies do you use to inspire your students, particularly in their research domains?
So I think in order to inspire someone, firstly I have to inspire myself and I have to ensure that I am following up on the expected standards upon what I want to achieve. So one thing in general in research which has to be done is to read a lot. I think gradually over time, all of us, including me, are losing the ability to read well over extended periods of time. It's to read, to talk to stakeholders, where at least for applied problems, talk to the relevant stakeholders, domain experts, try and understand the problems that they have. And most importantly, be very excited about building something, about solving some problems. So having the tool sets, learning the tools, techniques, which can help you prototype things quickly. So if you have an excitement about that and you can follow this feedback loop, of trying out some new ideas, reading something, trying out something new, getting to fail, taking some feedback from the external experts. That helps a lot, and writing also helps a lot in this endeavor. I've also very often seen like there are analogs to this called rubber duck prototyping, rubber duck debugging. So if you like, let's say if you're facing some computer programming bug, and how many of you might have seen that if you have such bugs, if you talk to someone in the act of explaining the problem to someone, you yourself get the answer. So that is the rubber duck debugging technique. So I think similar, you also get some benefit by writing. If you write down the question, articulate it nicely, sometimes you get the answers through that. That also propels some creativity. And if we talk about creativity week, I have to give a shout out to our colleagues at CCL. They are doing fantastic work. I'm always inspired by the amount of impact that they're able to generate.
I can relate to the writing part. I personally write whenever I feel that I am facing a problem and the problem becomes more clear.
Yeah.
So, sir, now we have talked a lot about the academic and your professional part of the life. On a more personal note, sir, how do you balance your professional life with your personal well-being? Is there any particular activity or hobby in which you engage?
So, how do I balance work and personal life? I think this was perhaps more of an issue in my earlier earlier career. I think I could just work the whole day, and it takes a toll after some time. So I asked this question to my postdoc mentor at University of Virginia. He had a very fixed schedule, which I was very inspired by, but I never understood how he was able to do work. So I told, how are you able to finish all the work in 9 to 5, something like that. He jokingly told that I got married and have kids. So basically wanted to say that if you have fixed boundaries, and of course those are reasonable boundaries. It doesn't mean that fixed boundaries is 9 a.m. to 11 and your day ends. If you have reasonable boundaries, you've figured out what needs to be done. I think that helps you prioritize a few things. You then don't feel the guilt in saying no for additional requests because you know that you have limited time, and that to me has helped a bit. I understand that I was not also able to do the same thing to a large extent when I was probably your age. I could still work very excitedly on research projects till 10 in the night, and then again 7 a.m. in the morning, come back to the lab and do those things. But apart from that, now and earlier also, I typically never want to waste my morning walk. Sometimes my evening walk, 15-20 minutes. And we are very privileged here in the beautiful campus. We have a lot of greenery. Sometimes we see beautiful animals also. Apart from that, if I don't carry a niggle, I would always love to play a sport, football or swimming or tennis or TT. I think to me that helps significantly because I'm a very competitive person. So that competitive mindset, which takes me out of the zone of my other typical work and gets me into a different zone, I think that has helped a lot.
So now, as we have talked a lot about deep and intellectual things, now we move on to the rapid fire round.
What was the first programming language that you learned?
This was Logo, I think Logo, where the turtle moves and you have to draw shapes. Class 4th.
So, what is one hidden talent of yours?
I don't think I'm typically a very boring person. I don't seem to have a lot of talent, hidden talents, etc. But I think if needed, and I did this in the US, I could cook rajma chawal like things well.
If you were to have breakfast with one great personality, who would it be and why?
Just one. I would. So as I mentioned, my love for sports and discipline and how that's inspired. Probably Rahul Dravid, the cricketer, as well as Sunil Chhetri, the footballer who just retired, and Novak Djokovic. I would love to talk about their regimen, their how they make the mental acumen sharper, how they work on both the physical and mental aspects, how they have learned to discipline themselves, how they've learned to embrace failure. Because like I was also listening to a graduation ceremony by Roger Federer recently. So he was mentioning that in tennis, roughly even players like Roger Federer lose half of the points. So that is the amount of failure. But how do they embrace failure? How do they learn from it? How do they not get impacted by it?
So, is there a tech myth you would like to debunk once and for all?
I think I am living in some bubble where we don't really have those myths. Oh, sorry, nothing comes to mind.
Do you think it's okay to use ChatGPT for assignments?
Is it okay to use ChatGPT for assignments? I think I would actually see a future where systems like ChatGPT are being used for assignment. They're being encouraged to be used for assignments. But you have to be careful that you use it to assist yourself and you understand your larger goals and you don't miss out on and just copy paste the answers that ChatGPT have given. I remember reading a tweet or an X post, now it's called X, recently, where someone got hospitalized because they read a book on what specific kinds of mushrooms are edible, etc. And they, based on the recommendation, they ate that mushroom. Later on, when they read it more, they realized that there was one line that, as a language model, this is what, etc., I can do. So it was probably ChatGPT or some system generated. So we have to be a little careful with those aspects also. To be honest, I use ChatGPT like systems myself to refine my understanding for various things, as well as I also understand how these things work. But I am also very careful with them. And so periodically, I turn off my ChatGPT internet and do some coding sessions. I love that.
Sir, if you could time travel, what would you choose to witness again?
Time travel, I would perhaps want to relive some of the childhood moments. I think as you grow old, you tend to miss those time periods where you were completely carefree, nothing to worry in the world. You could play as much as you want, and you were very fit, all of those things.
Yeah, even I would love to go back. What's the funniest excuse a student has given you for a late assignment?
Uh, there will probably be a few, but no funny excuse for late assignment comes to mind. But I have an opposite example. So I remember it was probably 15th August or something like that. It was a national holiday. And I had a operating systems lecture during that day, which of course didn't happen because of the national holiday. I remember a student come to me and saying, "Sir, ये तो छुट्टी हो गई अब वो आप वाली class कब पढ़ाओगे?" So I remember that. I was very impressed that this was the year I joined IIT Gandhinagar 2018. I was very impressed with the students that they're so eager to learn.
So, if you weren't a professor, what career would you have pursued?
I come from a business family, so that I would perhaps have had that as a backup. I was decent at football, probably that. Yeah, I think these two things come to mind.
What is more challenging, grading papers or explaining recursion to a first year student?
I think grading papers is harder because there is so much of subjectivity, and students like me have horrible writing, so that is hard. And sometimes you see that students perhaps were going there in the right direction, but you have to then judge what they have written and what they had in their head. I think that is hard.
So, one last question. How many times have you been lost finding your own office?
How many times I've been lost finding my office? When I first joined here, I was in block 6 where we're currently sitting. It took me about 2 to 3 days to get used to the building. New office, I think I was lost 4 or 5 times specifically for that, and I've created actually YouTube instructions for people to reach the specific office. I realized that like it'd be easier to then reach the office.
Thank you, Professor Batra, for sharing your insights and experiences with us today. It's been an enlightening conversation, and I'm sure our viewers have gained a lot from it.
Thank you. It's been great having discussion with you.
Absolutely, sir. It was great to know about your experiences and gain your wisdom.
And that wraps up today's episode. This episode of TEDxConversations was brought to you by MAPRC and Vintio. We thank them for their support and as well to our listeners for joining us today. We hope you found this conversation as inspiring as we did. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.